This is the Final Round Podcast, coming to you live from the FingerLakes1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. And now your host, Chris Marquardt. Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this edition of the Final Round Drag Racing Podcast. Excited to be back here at FingerLakes1.com studios. This is episode number 76, and it feels like episode number 1. Couple of hurdles to get through tonight, but nonetheless, here we are, excited to have all the folks tuning in and watching along with us on Facebook Live, which is a new and going to be an omnipresent element of Final Round Drag Racing Podcast as we move forward. Eric Alexander going to be joining us on the air here to talk a little bit about the drag racing out in the in Utah, the Great Salt Lake region. I was out there for some demolition derbies in the past. So
no kidding.
Yeah, it's a real cool area out there. It's I'm anxious to hear about it because when they joke about the dry heat,
yeah,
it really is. I mean, like, you don't sweat there; it evaporates. So I mean, it's got to make all sorts of challenges for making drag cars work.
I guess we'll find out.
So we'll be getting into that. In the meantime, though, how have you been? You know, we're talking to the disembodied voice of one Jason Oldfield. He's made the trip back in. Came up all the stairs all by himself, remembered where to go with his mask, didn't encounter anyone.
Did with my mask, and I've been very critical, but I did support NHRA by buying an NHRA branded mask. So, yeah, it's been good. It's been challenging, certainly. I mean, it's been a weird 2020 for sure, but at this point, we're back up and running, I think, and overall, we got racing going finally, and I will say this weekend you got the big $1.1 million race, SFG race going on right now up in Martin, Michigan, and I don't know about today, but I think Monday or Tuesday, they had 700 cars for the 20,000 to win race, and then they had a pair of 100,000s, and then the $1.1 million race. So people are definitely interested and excited about going back out and going racing again. So yeah, things are good.
It sure is. So we've got some guests with us tonight. We sure do appreciate Eric making the trip in to hang out with us here remotely and enduring the challenges here. Man, welcome to the show. We do appreciate you making some time for us, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on your show.
Absolutely. So we have a bunch of different things to get to. I saw that you were enjoying a little bit of relaxation time away from the daily grind and got out with a car here not too long ago. What did you take out? Where did you go, and how did it work?
You know what? We got a bad connection. I don't know if I can hardly hear you.
I'll work on that. You just go ahead. We're asking about where you went. How's things going?
Come on. Okay. Can you hear us, Eric?
I can hear you, but it's really saturated, so I'm trying to sort it all out.
Okay.
Yeah, no worries. So Chris was asking, he saw that you got the dragster, you got out recently. So, you know, where is your home track?
Well, we have got the strangest thing in the world, and we all know how many closed drag strips, how many drag strips have closed around the United States over the last 3 or 4 decades. It's a lot. But, yeah, our local NHRA track, Rocky Mountain Raceway, closed a year and a half ago. And that was that. And there is, technically, there's not a drag strip in Utah. And so we have had to resort to a track in Idaho and a track in Wyoming. Both are 8-mile tracks, outlaw tracks. And that's how we've got our fix. And then, of course, the coronavirus came along, and that really put a wrench in things for everyone.
Yeah, that's, I will say, so Rocky Mountain Raceway, so, well, I guess you said you were racing in Idaho. How far is that the closest track now for you?
Well, actually, the Hypoxia racetrack in Evanston, Wyoming is the closest, and it's just a small track, but, boy, we have a lot of fun there. It's a lot of fun. But the best one that's near us is Sage Raceway, and that's in Idaho Falls.
Now,
southern Idaho.
Now, it's funny because, you know, so Rocky Mountain Raceway I have heard of. I've never been out west and raced out west myself, so I've heard of Rocky Mountain Raceway. I guess I wasn't aware that they had closed. So from your location now, when you want to go racing, I mean, how far of a haul do you have to pack the stuff up and go racing?
It's 3 hours.
Oh.
We've got Grand Junction, and Grand Junction's a 3-hour drive, and Sage Raceway is a 3-hour drive. And, of course, Las Vegas is a 5-hour drive, and that's certainly the best route to go.
Yeah, I would say because, overall, I have to say that, Wyoming, well, when I think of Utah, I'm not going to say that, Wyoming is super far away, but I don't think as Wyoming being around the corner. I guess I would have guessed that Idaho is a little closer, but when you said that those are your closest tracks, it's like, man, I think you probably got a haul at this point, and 3 hours is definitely showing some dedication if you're going to go racing and you got at least a 3-hour drive.
Yeah, it is, and it's I got to say, I think it's frustrating. I talked with the people that manage the track, and there's 600 NHRA registered drag racers in Utah, and some reason we can't figure out how to get a racetrack. It's sad commentary.
Well, unfortunately, it's a problem that, like you had mentioned, is kind of plagues the entire country. I'm sure you've probably seen the news that historic Atco Dragway out here on the East Coast, out in New Jersey, has been sold, and it looks like is going to be repurposed as an auto auction. And first it was Englishtown a couple of years ago, and now Atco. So we have similar problems out here as well. That we have tracks kind of closing left and right, whether it's due to housing or whatnot. So I can certainly empathize with the situation. We're pretty lucky at the moment. Our local track out here is Empire Dragway, and Jerry Scatia bought the track. I want to say it was probably 5 years ago at this point, and he's all in. He's done a fantastic job. He's put a ton of money in it, and thankfully, we've had a bunch of people go out and support the track too from an attendance standpoint. So I got my fingers crossed, and I'm knocking on wood here that we don't run across this problem anytime soon in Western New York.
We're kind of spoiled, when you think about it.
Yeah. What happened here? It's just classic. 30 years ago, the racetrack was in the middle of nowhere, and then it steadily got developed and encroached upon more and more. And then all of a sudden it was noise pollution, and we can't have this anymore. And it's just, the roles reversed, and they're gone.
Yeah.
We were spoiled, and we still are, really. From where we sit right now, you can be at 3 different drag strips within an hour and a half.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And at one point it was 4 back when Spencer was running.
That's right.
And it's not that far of a haul, relatively speaking, to Lebanon Valley.
That's right.
And I don't think it's anywhere near 3 hours. And we used to have a drag strip at Fulton, and I think there was one at Utica Rome Speedway too, back when it was New Venture or something before that.
Right.
So our area was pretty saturated. And I think, didn't Buffalo have a track too?
So you obviously have Lancaster, right? You had Niagara Dragway back in the 70s. Canandaigua, I had found out that Canandaigua actually had a drag strip at one point in time too. Like I said, I mean, at the height of the sport, let's call it, in the late 60s, early 70s, this area was certainly saturated with tracks. Right now, if you're even if you want to go across the border into Canada, you have Toronto Motorsports Park
South Butler. South Butler's
you have
15 minutes.
Right. We still have a bunch of tracks around here. Now we don't have any of the palaces, so those guys down in the Jersey, Philly area, they were really spoiled for a while because they had Atco, Englishtown, Cecil County, Maple Grove, and I'm forgetting one, basically all within an hour's drive of each other. Wow. And they all had huge programs to be able to support it. But I'm not exactly sure what's gone on. But, just over the last few years, Maple Grove was for sale as well. So, honestly, Maple Grove is not on super steady ground either. It wouldn't surprise me if 5 years from now, if you went from that ridiculous amount of great tracks down to basically just Cecil County. And I don't know why that is, if it's just because of the fact that track owners can't make the money to support them, or if it's because they are like, hey, the property's so valuable, I'm better off to sell and just take my big wad of cash and go someplace. I don't know. Right. But it's we're, like I said, we are pretty lucky out here. But so I will.
Eric's tale is not new either. A number of the motorsport enthusiasts that I've talked to out in that area, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, the Dakotas, you're traveling a ways to get where you're going to go.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've had Jeff Jackson on the show who's up in Oregon, and I forget what his local track is. So he's got one track that's fairly close to him, but his next closest track is, I'll say, 3+ hours away. And then when he does the NHRA, racing, going to division events and stuff like that, I think his closest race was like 8 hours away or something like that. It was something ridiculous. So I guess that's what you get for living in a beautiful part of the country, Eric. You have to sacrifice and be willing to get in your car and drive.
Well, it's beautiful out here, that's for sure. I wished I was closer to a lot of tracks, but we really like it out here. I'm just as I'm following you, I'm thinking as a business owner myself, I have, and of course, when the drag strip closes, you start putting your brain to work, and I don't know how. Well, my guess is every person that owns an NHRA track's not making money hand over fist. Maybe the biggest venues, and that's probably it. I think if you're going to own a racetrack, you're doing it because you love it.
Yeah, I completely agree, and that's a situation that we have out here with the owner of Empire Dragway, is that he was an ex-drag racer himself, basically he had a repair shop and very successful business person, but decided that, hey, you know what, I'm going to sell basically all my businesses and my race cars, and I'm going to buy a drag strip. And now that I don't know how old Jerry is, let's say he's mature. But I think this has become kind of his hobby and retirement, if you will. And yeah, he's doing it because he loves it, just like you said. Now, you had mentioned, and at this point, we haven't even really kind of touched on you personally at all. And you just mentioned that you're a business owner as well. And I was telling Chris kind of the funny story about how I came to know you. And so, the short story for our viewers out there is that I was looking for a set of speakers for myself to replace the existing set of speakers that I have at my home. And upon doing some research, for some audiophile sites and stuff like that, I see, this brand Tekton Design, which I really didn't know, and just get glowing reviews. And so I start doing my research and going to the Tekton Design website. And I see this video with this guy, and the preview of the video is you, Eric, standing in front of a table with a set of cylinder heads. And I'm like, that looks like a set of cylinder heads, and that looks like a set of like aftermarket high-performance cylinder heads. They don't look like stock cylinder heads. I'm like, what is this all about? So watch the video, and I'm sure that you are familiar with it. But I mean, you were basically making the analogy that a set of speakers is much like basically pistons in an engine, that it comes down to airflow. I mean, speaker cones basically are pushing air. That's how they create sound, right?
Absolutely, and it's the backstory to this is funny, because as a child, I just wanted to build racing engines. That's all I wanted to do, was build racing engines. And now, while I'm in electroacoustical physics, but I still work with pistons every day. I did today. Put in a full 8 hours at work, and love to design this stuff. And there came a point in my mid-20s when I really had to decide what I'm going to do. I owned a super comp car, and owned a small business, and I just had to make the decision. I felt like I had less competition designing loudspeakers than trying to make outrageous racing engines.
And how did you get involved in the sport, and I guess in racing engines to begin with?
Well, knowing that this interview was coming up, I started reflecting on that, and I got to tell you, my father bought me. I'm 54, and so in the mid 70s, I'm like 8-9 years old. My father bought me one of those visible, the see-through V8 models, the little Rebel. Yep, the visible V8.
Yeah.
And man, I put that thing together, and I don't know. I've always been able to visualize physics. I've got a number of patents, and just that stuff just came natural to me. There's other things that I'm a total idiot at, but boy, I visualized physics, and I understood instantly how this stuff worked, and just took off and ran with it. And I was building my own engines at a high school and just out of high school age, and fell in love with it.
That's super cool. So nobody prior to you and your family had any, I guess, experience or with racing or high performance?
No, not really. But I was okay. So you touched on a few things. When I watched a really great video on Indy from the late 1960s, and in 1969 or 1970. More people attended the drag races at Indy than they did the Indy 500. Drag racing was the biggest thing in the biggest motorsports in the United States,
right,
in 1969 and 1970. And lucky for me, my best friend as a child, his dad was an auto mechanic, and he lived about 7 houses from me, and they went to the drags all the time. And so as a kid, I had to figure out what's this whole drags thing and what's this all about. So racing really wasn't in my family, but boy, my brothers and I, we lived it as teenagers, and in our 20s, we lived that.
So at this point, how long have you been racing now yourself?
Well, I had to take a long break. I ended up selling that car, but I'll share a few things with you. I'm not so much keen on and interested in just going super fast and being a driver. My passion all along has been twofold: to build the engines and to be a good steward. We've got I've got 5 dragsters, and they're all considered to be vintage cars. I've got an old Woody Gilmore coming together. Eventually, I'll get to it. I haven't. We just purchased it about 2 years ago, and I've got another front engine dragster from the 60s that somebody built by hand. We haven't figured out who built that one, but so that's been my love. And of course, with my career in audio, I had to walk away from it. So I've always followed drag racing, always loved drag racing, but it wasn't until the business really got successful that I could go out and do what I wanted to do. And so for me, again, I want to continue to find some of these old cars. The slingshot that we've been racing, I pulled that thing out of the graveyard. It was it was in sad shape, and I got about halfway into it, and I was in over my head. I felt like I had spent too much money on it, and questioned my sanity a few times. But then after we made a few passes in it, and it's been pretty exciting. It's been a fun little project.
On the topic of vintage cars, the Dirty 30 went down during our time away.
Oh, it did,
didn't it?
Oh yes,
right?
Yes, it did. Yep. Yeah, he crashed. Oh God, he was at, I forget what track he was at, but this is the unfortunate thing. This is one of the guys that we've had on the show, Eric, and he races the no prep style race, and the car is it was a 30 Plymouth, I think.
I can't remember.
I
can't remember now.
But an original
Nick
steel
Funiak's
body. 30, I think it was a 30 Plymouth, and they was at a no prep race, and lost traction and lost control of the car and crashed. And the unfortunate thing is that I'm not sure what happened at the end of the track. I haven't actually talked to him to find out, but caught fire at the end of the track, and thankfully he was able to get out with only minor burns, I think, to his hands. But yeah, the car was then a blazing inferno. So yeah, I totally forgotten about that. And so
he was about to buy 2 cars down in Alabama to replace it. They were going to get a new his and her project set. And he went to get them, and the cars were gone. Basically, the guy sold them out from under him, and it was unfortunate. So last I knew, Nick was still looking for a new set of wheels. I don't know where he's at in his hunt at this point, but he wants to get another old project like that. I was heartbroken when I saw those pictures. First, I was thankful that he was all right. All things considered, he was okay.
Yeah.
Some burns to his hands and some pretty major bruises to the psyche losing a car like that, because it's not like you can just go get another one.
Right. Right. And I know Nick.
He's undaunted.
I know Nick Pluniak is the guy's name, Eric, and I know. So his first vehicle was I won't say it's his first, but his previous vehicle to the Dirty 30 was what was called the stretchy truck, and it was an S10 that had a ridiculously long stretched wheelbase with a turbocharged motor in the bed. So it was a mid-engine S10. But yeah, it garnered a lot of attention because it was just such a unique piece. And he crashed that car at Lancaster and then built the Dirty 30. And that car started going pretty fast. He liked to do the hot rod power tour and those types of things. So, I mean, the thing was, completely street legal. That's the crazy thing, too, is that these things are just so fast these days and street legal. And I know Nick had been looking potentially, the problem with the Dirty 30 is that it was a brick from an aerodynamic standpoint, and you're definitely fighting that. And as a race car driver, and let's call it fabricator and engineer, right? You're always looking to improve your performance and go faster and make improvements. And he really felt like the truck or the Dirty 30 was holding him back, but it was such a unique piece, and people loved it, including myself. I actually got the pleasure of racing against him a couple of times, just in time runs, and I loved that, and never told Nick, but secretly wished that he would never sell that vehicle, because I thought it was fantastic. And the really cool thing is that it seems like now for his next project, he is definitely looking for something unique. So it will be another throwback vehicle, I believe, from the 30s to probably early 60s vintage that he's going to make into a cool car. And I give Nick a lot of credit because like yourself, Eric, he does it all on his own. I mean, he, and I'm not saying he doesn't get help from people, but I mean, he builds the chassis, does all the fabrication work, builds the engines, everything he does by himself. And those are the types of people that I really, really respect. So hopefully Nick will be back out shortly. But getting back, I guess, to your current stable of race cars. So the front engine dragster, I mean, was this the first car that you bought when you decided to get back into the sport?
It was. My brother and I had just, we had talked for years about finding some vintage car, and I question my sanity more than anything, because I think my biggest goal over the years was to just build a really nice super comp car again, something that was very competitive and consistent. But I don't know, as I got older, it was just something that I just really, ultimately some of this stuff I plan on restoring and popping it in a museum somewhere.
Yep.
And we got a few unique old cars that's really where they belong. You talk about these wrecks. I'd be sick if one of us ever crashed any of these cars, and of course, we don't want anybody to get hurt, but putting it back together from being crashed is something I just don't even want to think about.
Well, and I can, again, completely identify with that. So I don't know how much we talked about, my car. So I race one guy's car, Phil Herndon. I drive his Super Gas Camaro. My car, the car that I own, is a 63 Corvette. It's an original 63 Corvette that my dad bought in 1964. And me and my dad spent a lot of time. My dad's no longer with us, and me and my dad spent a lot of time in the garage working on that car, and I would be heartbroken if anything ever happened to it. Now, it's one of those things that every racer knows. Every time you go down the track, something could happen. You just never know. But yeah, it's something that I also don't spend a lot of time dwelling upon, because if I did, I'd probably never take the car out of the garage.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can totally understand where you're coming from that standpoint. And when you put so much work into a car to get it up and running, I mean,
it's got to stay for life right now as a spare shelving unit in your garage, right on the hood. than it's ever going to get hurt going on a racetrack.
Right now, actually, I think the only thing that's stored on top of it is one empty cardboard box. And the only reason why the cardboard box is there is because my son bought the house across the street, and he's moving into it at the end of the month. So I haven't thrown that box out because I'm figuring he's going to need it when he moves. But so the Corvette hasn't been bad, but it's also sitting on jack stands underneath covers. Crying at me every time I open the garage door saying, please, Jason, take me out to the racetrack. Fix me. So other than the front engine dragster that you have, now that car, what does that have for a power plant in it?
It's a small block Chevy, alcohol small block Chevy.
Which is perfect. I love that combination.
Well, yeah, it originally had a big block Chevy, a fuel-injected alcohol big block Chevy, and so at some point, and see, that's then how do I say this? I could have went that route, but I think the car would scare the hell out of me. This car is squirrely and does not want to leave straight. It's terribly inconsistent. It's just. But it's fun, We've watched people in the stands. We pull up and do the burnout, and people clap because you don't see a lot of those anymore. And it's interesting to hear old timers' comments and things about that car. But so when we completely restore it, it would be great to take it back to where it should be in a big block Chevy, fuel injected.
Sure. Yeah, and again, I will say I can identify. So you had mentioned, that you're an older guy, and as you got older, business became successful. That's when you kind of got back into racing. But your perspective, it's not just in racing, but in life, kind of changes as you get older. And when I was a kid, my dad was racing the car. So my dad drove. It was a small block 5-speed for the longest time. And we only switched to an automatic finally near the end of my dad's life when we completely blew up the 5-speed. And we had to make a change. And it became so much work, we decided, okay, you know what, we're going to put an automatic in the car. So last few years of his life, he ran the car with a small block and a power glide in it like everybody else did out at the racetrack. Now that I'm almost 50 years old, I can look back and I realize, you know what? I understand why my dad ran the 5-speed all those years and didn't want to let it go. It was because there was more to going to the racetrack than just winning. And he loved driving that car and having a unique piece that people would talk about. It wasn't just another big, we used to joke, it wasn't just another big block power glide car out at the racetrack. And obviously in super gas, that's the dominant combination. If you want to be competitive in super comp or super gas, it's like you have a big block and a power glide.
In a Bel Air.
In a Bel Air, well, I guess you could. But yeah, and back in the 70s, it was 68 and 69 Camaros, right? Boring. It's like, here comes another 68, 69 Camaro. How many are there out at the racetrack? There was thousands of them, for God's sakes. But yeah, so I totally get it. It's do I want to win when I go out the racetrack? Absolutely. When I pull up the staging beams, am I going to try and cut the best light and just destroy the guy in the lane next to me? Yep, 100%. But I go out to the racetrack to have fun. That's first and foremost. And when I stop having fun, that's when I'm going to stop going to the racetrack. Winning or not. Unfortunately, sportsman racing doesn't, unless you're at the SFG $1.1 million race this weekend, sportsman racing doesn't pay enough money to support yourself. So you're going to have a job, and if I'm doing this as a hobby and for fun, well, it better be fun. So I totally,
Audrey, everybody's, where we go, it's like we're all friends. You get there and it's, you're with people that are like-minded and same hobbies, and that's really enjoyable.
When you talk about a restoration on that car, what is the restoration? Is it some sort of combination between modern and period, or are you going back to original? Or what's the plan with the resto on that?
Well, you know what? I want to change gears. I'm gonna tell you about a car that I got going together right now. That's kind of a fun car.
Right.
So I've got this 1987 Top Fuel car that was built by Virgil Hartman, and it's such a unique car. So visualize what Top Fuel looked like in '87, and that's what this thing is. But the thing that's so unique about it is the guy that I bought it from, and it came out of Winslow, Arizona, and I can't remember the guy's name. Great guy, but he had Virgil Hartman build him this chassis, and the car literally sat for 25 years. And he never did anything with it. He turned 50, and the story he told me, he says, I turned 50, and my wife came to me and said, "Are you ever going to do anything with that car?" And so he put a big block Chevy, an alcohol-injected big block Chevy in it, and went racing. But I think he got bit by the bug, because then he ended up buying a newer, much more modern car. And so I found the car and bought it. And it has 30 lifetime passes on it. I've got a car that's built in 1987, and I tell you, the thing is like brand new. It's the components, everything on it. It's kind of a time machine, and so ultimately, I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but it sure is a fun car. And then Dave Storling, the popular hot rodding, the engine master guru. We got a big block Chevy from him, and this car's going to run. It's going to be great. So that's what's coming together now. And if it wasn't for coronavirus, I would have just finished the car, but business has just had me hopping manufacturing speakers, so I haven't had any time to spend on it. But that's the car that I'm excited about right now.
I would say, so Virgil Hartman, for those people that don't know, so Virgil is the father of Richard Hartman. And I think last I knew, I believe he was crew chief for one of the Top Fuel teams. Might have been Terry McMillan. So Richard has a pretty storied Top Fuel career. My guess is, Richard's got to be at least my age, and I'm sure he's probably got kids that are probably running in Super Comp or something like that now too. Certainly a storied family, drag racing family there from that standpoint. Now, do you keep all of these cars? Well, so now we talked about two cars. So there's the Slingshot, and then there's the Top Fueler. Now, what are the other three cars that you have?
They're former Super Comp cars. I've got a '92 Edquay Super Dragster, and oh my gosh, of course the Woody car. That's the one that's just sitting. I guess it's aging like a fine wine. That one's going to take some work to get back to where it needs to be, but it's all there, and it's a great little car, and it's going to be fun. And then we've got another Super Comp car that's I can't remember the chassis brand, the builder, but it's very much like the Edquay car.
So those are going to be, like I said, they're Super Comp style dragsters. Those are going to be fun cars to take out, go bracket race, maybe go run Super Comp once in a while type of thing. But that's the plan, I'm assuming, for those, right? Nothing totally special.
There's a back motive to all this too. Is I have three sons that reside in Washington State, not in Utah. So hopefully here before long they'll be with me, and we'll all go racing, and we'll all have a car. That's one of the ultimate goals.
I was saying the old man's going to drive the Top Fuel car, I'm assuming.
I don't want to go fast. I seriously do not want to go fast. I don't want to go fast. I don't know who's going to drive it.
Well, again, it's funny. So my kids, my daughter just turned 17. My son's going to be 16 here in a couple of weeks, and my daughter at one point showed some interest in racing, but my son never really has. Whether either of them will really ever get into it, I don't know. But racing with my dad, I always had fun, let's call it being the crew chief. And even though he was driving, it was fun just being out there with him, even though I wasn't driving. And I could totally see myself today, if one of my kids was really interested, stepping aside and gladly allowing them to take the seat and going back to just the crew chief. And I'll maintain the car, I'll take care of it, and do all the rest of that, and be the coach, if you will. And I think that for me is I think it's part of the engineer in me that is always looking for ultimate performance, if you will. So I could totally see your three boys coming down and you kind of taking that role as well.
That's the hope. We'll see what happens.
Now, you had mentioned, people don't know, most people, I'm guessing most viewers that we have probably don't know you personally or your professional history. I told Chris, before we went on the air that, you're kind of a big deal in the audiophile world. I think you've been interviewed by all the big magazines and everybody else out there, and I find it interesting. You had said, I just heard you say that you've been so busy with coronavirus building speakers.
Yeah, it's the opposite of. Just visualize a bunch of audiophiles, music lovers. Now, this is a male-dominated sport, quite a bit like drag racing, but a bunch of men bored that listen to music all day long at home with a stimulus check. We have been very busy, and it's the strangest thing. I've taken this drag racing attitude and really cross-platformed it. A lot of the way that engine building is done, and I think about Top Fuel and Funny Car and Pro Stock. These it's that slight edge. It's what I mean. Of course, there's a driver involved, but when the car, you watch some of these teams that win for years and years or for a solid season. And they've definitely got kind of a slight edge, and that's kind of been the attitude that we design our audio products with, is that we want to make really cool man products, and we want them to perform. Most, unless you're an audiophile, most men are going to go to a Best Buy or a Costco and buy an audio product, or Crutchfield online or something like that. But we want to take it far beyond that and make really high performance audio products, and that's what we do. And we've got clients that are some of the most famous music lovers and musicians, and we've got quite a list of clients. And so it's been it's something that I just truly love to do. I really love music and making high performance loudspeakers.
Yeah, and I will say, from a speaker standpoint, overall, this is, the thing that I think I've seen over and over again, and it's a different level. I mean, I guess from a drag racing standpoint, I'll say, the Super Gas is the Crutchfield Best Buy speaker of the world, right? I mean, we're definitely moving into the comp eliminator or pro stock type of category here. But when you look at the performance of the speakers that you guys build, the one thing that I have heard kind of over and over again is that really, for the performance that you get, the value that Tekton delivers is really incredible. That to me was really something that really kind of, I guess, brought me to Tekton to begin with, was the fact that, I'm going to be spending potentially more money than I would for a home theater in the box from Best Buy. But when you look at the performance that I'm getting for the money that I'm spending, that's something that you guys have really delivered on. And the other thing I will say that's incredible to me, and it's completely new to me, I guess I don't necessarily consider myself to be an audiophile, if you will. I mean, I really do enjoy home theater audio, and I always wanted to have a little bit better performance, but you are a custom speaker designer and builder. So yes, you have your standard models, but when we talked, I couldn't believe that you're saying to me, well, what color do you want? Well, you can have any color you want. Just pick out your paint and let us know, and we'll paint them that color. I'm like, what? I can have any color I want? So that's just that's a totally different, I guess, mindset that I'm used to.
We're the monster garage of audio. I've said that for 10 years. Adam Lambert, he's one of our clients, and everybody probably knows who Adam Lambert is, but he's got a pair of speakers in his living room, and he designed what he wanted, and we put that together. He changed his mind. We built it again, and he's got a one-off pair. So, yeah, we've done this hundreds and hundreds. I've got 183 SKUs. So that's just what my team can build from, and that's. But so we've got something that's just right for pretty much anybody. A lot of this stuff ends up in studios or a music composer's house or who knows where, but it's pretty specialized gear. There comes a point, and maybe it's here's another close parallel with motorsports and the car you're going to drive to work in. There's a loudspeaker or a headphone that's a consumer audio product, but then there's also a loudspeaker that's a tool for a man's toolbox, and it's his profession, and he needs an accurate loudspeaker that performs, and that's one of the bases that we cover.
Yeah, and I will say that that's one of the speakers that I'm personally looking at as the lore reference, and I watched a video that you made about that speaker when you kind of came up with it. Was that you wanted something that was going to be a little bit more accurate, and that's kind of why you came up with the lore reference compared to the standard lore line. There's some really interesting technology, like you had mentioned that you have a bunch of different patents, but at the same point in time that you're designing these, the one day that I called to talk to you, kind of to get your recommendations about what you thought I should do, and I don't know, I forget the receptionist's name that I spoke with, but she's like, yeah, Eric is back in the paint booth right now. Could he call you back later? So, I mean, you're back there still painting speakers as well.
I'm one of those guys. I am up to my elbows in it. Marcy, my wife, was there this afternoon and taking care of things. And I'm not at the pool drinking lemonade and eating bonbons. I'm working on this stuff.
So when it comes to the race cars, do you do all the body work and paint on those as well?
Well, the one thing I don't do, and I guess I could figure it out if I ever had enough time, is weld. So I've got a brother that does the MIG and the TIG weld, but beyond that, of course, I can paint. There's a funny side story too, is that when you're an audio engineer and a speaker designer and you want to sell your products, of course, our stuff's made in America, and that's something that your audience should be aware of too, is that we do this and it is American made. And yeah, we're patriotic, and we don't hide it. And I lost my train of thought.
I was as you're talking about being patriotic, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, I wonder if I could have you do like a custom American flag paint job on my speakers.
We'd have. I remember what we were talking. That'd be a vinyl wrap, by the way, and we don't do that very often. But that's the only way that's going to happen. But so I started designing this stuff and got recognized in certain circles about how good this stuff sounded, and of course I had to figure out how to paint. And luckily, I was around auto body a lot when I was younger, and have still today some great friends in the auto body world that are very, very good at what they do. And I can't help but think about some of the the Autorama type finishes, the Foos, the Kindigs, the really beautiful stuff, and that's another element of what we try and accomplish is we've put on Ferrari colors and Rolls-Royce colors and Lamborghini colors, and it really is a cool man product. And So it's it's not a car. It's finished very, very much like a car.
Have you had any technology crossover from one to the other? Have you used anything from drag racing and tried it in loudspeaker design or vice versa?
Absolutely. Two things. If you look at the 1812, you'll immediately see that it resembles a 12-cylinder engine, and it works incredibly well. That speaker plays to 143 dB for the pair, uncompressed, undistorted.
Wow.
A guy could go to Bon Jovi or Rush or whatever their favorite band is one night and literally drive home and have the same experience in their house. And it's patented, and the technology really works. There's other elements, and so there are what we do with loudspeakers and what we do with engines and breathing, and engines have you can build a big block Chevy and get 1,200 horsepower out of it with one hand tied behind your back. And
sure.
2 or 3 decades ago, that was a pretty tall order.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are some amazing parallels, fascinating parallels to me, and I think that's one reason why I've really gotten so interested in getting back into engine building and drag racing, and because there are some real fascinating parallels where it's nothing I can talk about, but of course we're working on some patents right now in real time that are very much related to how engines function, and they're going to produce sound.
That's I would say that is super cool. Did you ever I guess it's not really required anymore. I mean, I think the rules still apply, but did you ever, when NHRA kind of started with the whole muffler thing, were you involved with the sport at all? Did you ever get involved with any of the sound deadening? I mean, I would have to assume that if you want to be able to create sound, that you also would know how to deaden sound at the same point in time.
Yeah, the thing that comes to my mind, I will tell you that I have traveled to national events on purpose, intentionally, with my audio engineering hat on, just to experience. And not only experience, but to pay really, really close attention to the Top Fuel cars and the funny cars, and the intensity and so how am I trying? I'm losing my I'm not I'm not the slickest talker. Let's just say that. But if you think about the audio experience of Top Fuel and Funny Car, that has inspired me as much or more than anything else has in the way of producing the sound that we produce with our loudspeakers.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that I think it's Fox that has their crank it up during the NASCAR races, and it's cool that they I guess boost the volume and basically stop talking and let you kind of enjoy it. It still doesn't totally capture the real experience that you would get. And I tell everybody, whether you're a drag racing fan or not, everybody on the planet should experience watching a set of Top Fuel dragsters go down the track at least once. Because the first time that you go and experience that, it will take your breath away. It's unbelievable. And I would love to, I have to say, my neighbors probably wouldn't like it, but I would love to be able to recreate that in my house. Actually, my wife wouldn't even like that either. I have to say that...
I don't necessarily want to recreate that, but we want to understand the physics behind that. You remind me of a really funny experience that I had. Is one of the audio engineers that I worked with for a few years, I kept telling him about these cars, and he just would brush it off. And of course, we did an audio project on a Formula One track, the distributed audio, the speakers that go around the track. We were involved in a Formula One track, and I'm like, you got to hear these cars. You got to hear these cars. You've chosen to make this career and this living out of audio, and you've never heard anything like this. And for the first few weeks and months that I would plant the seed and, hey, let's just jump on a plane and go to Las Vegas, I could tell he just wasn't taking me serious. and then it was queued up so well because we flew to Las Vegas and we got on the track, and the first funny cars that came out, he was absolutely dumbfounded, could not wrap his brain around it. And of course, I mean, this is an audio physics guy,
right?
And so, I mean, he could not wrap his brain around it. The words out of his mouth, he's like, Eric, this is space-time continuum. This is beyond audio.
Yeah, I would say when you really get into all the statistics that go behind a set of fuel cars, or just a fuel car in general, as far as how quickly it accelerates. For the people that aren't, I guess, into drag racing, I mean, the way that I explain it to them now is that really, they go 0 to 330 miles an hour in 3.8 seconds. And, most people know there's 0 to 60 times, and they know that a 0 to 60 time of 3.8 seconds is considered a fast car. I mean, these cars are going 330 miles an hour. It's really incredible, the physics behind it. And, I mean, the whole experience, I will say that the two things that I remember, well, three things, I guess, in general, that I remember seeing that were just incredible to me. Obviously my first set of fuel cars ever was incredible. Seeing a rocket car, which they don't run anymore, but I was a little kid when they still ran rocket cars, and seeing a rocket car was unbelievable. And seeing the space shuttle. Those were the three things that made an indelible mark on my memory. It was like, that was absolutely incredible.
You saw a space shuttle launch?
I saw a space shuttle launch. Yes, I did.
Really? What was that?
Oh, God. So I'm going to say 85-ish. The funny thing is about space launches is that obviously they have very finite windows as to when these can take place. So my family had scheduled a vacation to take us kids to Disney World. We fly down there, and when we get down there, there's signs. It's like, shuttle to, shuttle, meaning a bus, go see the space shuttle take off. And it's like, well, geez, when was that? Did we just miss that or something? And it's like, no, it's coming up in a couple of days. We figured that everybody who was here to see the space shuttle. And it's like, no. So last second, we made plans to go to Cape Canaveral and see the space shuttle, and it took off, right on schedule like it was supposed to. And I'll tell you what, when they say we're liftoff, I think we were there in October. It was early in the morning. It was dark. It lit the sky like the sun came up. It was incredible. And when they say that liftoff is at 7:11, it is at 7:11, not 7:12, not around kind of. And we had people that drove up afterwards. They're like, "Yeah, okay, where is it?" It's like, yeah, you missed it. It's gone. They're not waiting. But yeah, it was incredible. I would love to see. Obviously, can't see the space shuttle, but I would love to see some of the modern rockets take off. But I mean, it's total luck because so many times the launches get scrubbed because of weather or technical problems or whatever else, and we just totally lucked out that everything was perfect and it actually
to a space launch.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. So highly recommend that if you ever get an opportunity to do that too. But it's really crazy overall. Again, getting back to Top Fuel things, I do love I don't know if you've ever seen one, Chris. They have like reactionary videos. So I'm going to take my smartphone and tape you as you're sitting there watching your first set of fuel cars, and the expression on people's faces is pretty incredible.
It's like getting punched in the chest.
And I mean, Eric, you just told a perfect story. I mean, people don't. Oh, you must be over-exaggerating and all the rest of it. It's like there's no way to really even begin to explain what it's like until you take somebody there. And, it's funny, too, because when they do the burnouts, right, they're only running on one fuel pump and they have the throttle stop on. And it's like, that's not that loud. It's like, oh, just wait. You'll see.
Yep.
And I will say I love the videos too of from watching the camera pointed from the back of the car as they take off from the starting line, and you see the people go from this big to that. You can't see them anymore in a heartbeat. It's incredible. Which I found actually, sort of similar tangent. I found it interesting, Eric, that doing some research on speakers, that sound waves coming out of speakers actually break the speed of sound at times?
No, you must have done some of the. You must have researched some of my patent work.
Ah. Well, I was surprised. I was surprised to be reading some of that stuff, and yes, I did. By the way, being the techno geek that I am, I had to go digging a little deeper. But how fast are sound waves coming out of your standard?
It's the switching would take place very quickly. The switching between speakers would take place very quickly. So here's a thought experiment. The funny car and the top fuel car, from your perspective in the stands. Now, do you mind if I get a little technical for a minute?
No, absolutely.
All right, okay. And there's a train, so that's cool.
Yep.
Yeah, love it. Okay, because there's some great karma going on there. All right, so if I have a loudspeaker, or if there's a violinist on a stage and that person's playing the violin, that's a point source, and the sound that comes off of that is going to expand like a balloon. Just visualize the sound starting in the palm of your hand, and as that sound expands out, it's like a balloon blowing up. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it gets from the point of observation, it gets weaker and weaker and weaker. Okay.
Yep.
So, I mentioned that I've got this weird career that I have drag racing enmeshed in my audio, and so if we think of a top fuel car, from the perspective of the observer, that car accelerates at just enough of a speed that it reinforces itself down the track. In other words, you're listening to a line array. You're listening to a constantly reinforced column of audio, of sound, the pistons popping. Visualize when lightning strikes. So when lightning strikes, there's thunder, and it's very intense because it's a sound source that's a very tall sound source. Highways have the same effect. So one of the reasons why dragsters, the top fuel cars, are so intense is because as they go down the track, they're reinforcing the sound. And so from the observer, the sound doesn't attenuate like a point source. It attenuates like a line source. So the intensity is naturally much, much higher.
That's pretty interesting. Yeah, it's the things that I guess as the audio file peon like I am, it's like, as far as I've ever taken audio I guess analysis out at the track is you're standing a quarter mile away, and you can see the lights turn on the Christmas tree, and you can see the smoke come out of the exhaust pipes, but you don't hear the sound until, I don't know what it is, a quarter a second later, however long it takes. So that's as deep as I've ever gotten with regards to audio at the racetrack. It's interesting to think about. I guess. So
here's another thought experiment for you. Let's say that we were in a city where there was a highway, and we could go sit on a bench 3 miles away. So we're 1,000 feet above the highway, and I tell you this because that's the scenario that I have here. We're on the Wasatch Front. I can ride my bike 1,000 feet above the highway and be 3 miles from the highway. And because there's hundreds of cars simultaneously going down the highway, I can hear the road noise.
Right.
Okay. Now, there could be a man with his lawnmower a quarter mile away, and that's a point source. It's just one little lawnmower engine running, and I'll never hear it. And so that's the same observation. The other one would be when you go to the ocean. The ocean is so impressive because when the wave crashes, you're listening to a column of a horizontal sound source that might be 100 yards long. And so it's very intense.
Right. I would say so. Chris is familiar with Utah, so I don't know if you heard the opening. So Chris has a background in demolition derbies.
Yeah, you know what I just took from Eric's thought experiment?
What's that?
The fact that I got hit by a town and country in Wasatch.
Oh, did you really?
What was that, Chris? I missed it.
Yeah, we were at the Wasatch Wipeout, which was we stayed in Park City, and it was the Wasatch Wipeout, the county fairgrounds that they put in the big. They got the big arena there. And they situated us at the center point of the track, so we had equal distance to left and right.
Yep.
And Brad Bowman had a Cadillac, and he got a hold of the back of Brian Turner's Town and Country. It was a '68 Town and Country wagon, and he shoved him to the wall, and he hit the wall, and the brick or the Jersey barrier fell over. And Brad's not one to lift. He kept on pushing him, and the Town and Country went up in the air and then down, and the back end went up, and Brad kept pushing him, and he shoved him all the way to the stage where we were. And
I think I've seen the video. Have you used that as a highlight video?
No, I haven't used it as a highlight video. Somebody got hurt in that, so I really don't know.
Oh, okay.
A friend of ours ended up, because all of us panicked and got up and started to shift backwards. One of the people lost their balance and fell back into a chair that was over the top of one of my friend's fingers and blew the tip of her finger off, and so it was a little harrowing. I mean, we were very fortunate because it was pipe and concrete behind us, so we had no choice but to go lateral.
Right.
And no time to really even think about it at all. It made for some great pictures. But we ended up.
And did you were cameras? I'm assuming you were there doing a live stream of it, right?
It happened live. They red flagged the whole thing, and so I had a picture of myself looking kind of with the corner of the monitor.
Yeah.
Right here, where you could see the camera from across the track, you could see the back of Brad's car and the back of the wagon up in the air.
Okay,
like this,
yeah.
And the nose of the wagon right here. And it was just like, what just happened? But we were very fortunate nobody got hurt. That could have been bad. But no, I'm familiar-ish with the area.
With that area.
Yeah.
And is that's all... so you'll have to excuse my ignorance, Eric, because I am not really familiar with Utah at all. Utah is one of the few states in the United States that I've never visited. So is this all, let's call it, around the Great Salt Lake area?
Well, it runs about 100 miles long, and there's just a bench along the whole thing, and so there's a mountain range to the east, and then everything's developed down below that, and of course there's the Great Salt Lake and Utah Lake and all that along there. So now these demolition derbies, that's popular stuff, man. I could give you all the towns, and that's in certain circles, that's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, we've worked a number of shows out there. We were in Wasatch, we were in Ogden a couple times.
Now, Eric, have you done anything with or know people that compete in the demolition derbies at all?
So I'm afraid to go fast. I'm certainly not going to get in a demolition derby car. That's the great redneck sport. I love that. My wife and I attend that regularly, so that's fun stuff.
I will say it's funny. I had no, again, being ignorant, no experience with real demolition derbies ever before meeting Chris. And yeah, when I thought of demolition derbies, I always thought of your local county fair where you take your junk cars and you go out and smash them up, and then they go to the junkyard, and that's it. And then it shouldn't surprise me, Eric, but then talking with Chris, I come to find out that they basically take high performance drag racing engines and transmissions and reinforce them, and they put them into junk cars because there's money on the line to be won.
Not even junk cars anymore.
Right.
They're paying $3,500 for a GM wagon show, and where Eric lives, it is nothing to get a demolition derby. The feature winner takes home $25,000.
Yeah, and that to me again was just completely foreign to me. I'm like,
you know what? It's really nice to go to a different motorsports show and have somebody say, you know what? It might not be as redneck as you think. Because it is. It's nice. I mean, we got this show on Mondays, and in September it's going to be 7 years that we've had that show going.
Yeah.
And we've spent a lot of time trying to educate and get word out and let people know that these are personalities and these are rock stars of a particular sport, that it's got a reputation, but when you get up to the professional levels, just like dirt track, just like drag racing, you get up to the professional levels, they're professionals. It's
right.
I watched a dude take a $15,000 engine and send the valves through the stacks and embed them in the roof of the Stormont Vale Event Center. You know what I mean? And he still honed on it until there was no sparks left to throw.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's, and some people will take this the wrong way, but I mean, it is literally the true definition of ignorance. I mean, I just didn't know. It wasn't that I was dumb. I just didn't know. I mean, like I said, I assumed that Demolition Derby was your local county fair, and that was it. But yeah, hanging around you, and this is the thing about cars. I mean, as a craftsman, or whether you're a technician or a fabricator, you can generally appreciate whatever type of car or vehicle or whatever it might be. It might not be for you, but you can still appreciate it. So, I mean, there's tons of paint jobs that, I'm thinking of, the Southern California hydraulic lowriders, right? Sure. That car does nothing for me personally. I would never want to own one of those vehicles. But if you go and you look at the engineering and you look at the paint work that these guys put on these cars,
they're airbrushing over the
it's
stuff.
Impressive stuff. Yeah, so I can appreciate the craftsmanship that goes into it. Now, is that my cup of tea? No, not my cup of tea at all. Would I ever go race Demolition Derby? Maybe. I mean, kind of sounds a little fun to me, but probably not. But I mean, again, probably not my cup of tea. But I can appreciate all of the work and time that these guys have put into it that, yeah, you just don't think about it. And I know that we have talked about this before. Anytime that you basically have a race, it doesn't matter what it is. If we're going to race, horses, buggies, carriages, Pinewood Derby, it doesn't matter. Guys become competitive.
Yes.
Yes. If I can interject here, these Demolition Derby cars, that's a great, those are prepped from headlight to tail light. They go over every inch of that car. They're going to have the certain wheel on it, the certain tire on it. They're going to reinforce this, and they're going to push the rules all the way to the nth degree, because there are hard, fast rules that you can't fudge. But they're going to have the gear ratio they want, the engine they want. They're going to hope and pray that thing can run without a radiator for 15 minutes. They're prepped, and they know what they're doing. I've seen the guys that dominate in that arena, and they really prep these cars.
You must not live too far from where they had the Olympic moguls and downhill competition, too, right?
No.
I would say the Olympics. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and when we went to Wasatch, we drove not too far. I can't remember the name of the. I want to say it was Park City, but I know that's not right. We went by the Big Jordan Reservoir, and then where we went, you could see up on the mountain. Yeah. That's where they did the mogul competition when the Winter Olympics were in Salt Lake.
Oh,
you have Camas that has regular races, Camas, and then there's oh my gosh, Heber.
Yeah,
Heber City.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I can't help you. I know nothing.
I had gotten away from the Derby side of things, and I was hung up on the Olympics there. So it's all good.
Well, I would say at this point, Eric, we've had you on the phone a little over an hour. We generally try to run an hour. I mean, we could probably sit here and talk about demolition derby and loudspeaker design and drag racing for probably another couple hours. But certainly, with nothing else, we'd love to, I guess, have you back on the show. Before we let you go tonight, is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to touch on, or anybody that you'd like to thank, or anything like that?
Well, I think I'm good. Jason, I'm just grateful that you put this thing together, and it's been interesting to. So I just want to say thanks. I'm not sure who my audience is, but it's been a delight. It's been fun, and would love to do it again. And thanks.
Hey, well, it's our pleasure. I mean, certainly, keep us, up to date as far as the racing when you get out. Now that we're friends on Facebook, I'm sure, see the pictures when you go out to the track when you're out there, so we can kind of keep touch base that way. Certainly, for anybody that's interested in a set of nice speakers, be it a set of stereo speakers or home theater speakers, I would certainly encourage you to go to Tekton Design and check out Eric's work. And the nice thing is the fact that you guys do have speakers, anything down from, let's call it the value end that anybody can afford, like myself, to, super high end if you want to get into that type of thing. But I would certainly encourage everyone, if you're interested in something like that, to check out your work, because it's pretty incredible.
Well, thanks. Thanks, Chris, and thanks, Jason.
Absolutely, man. We look forward to catching up with you again soon. Thanks for coming on.
All right.
Thank you, Eric.
See you next time.
Have a good night.
Take care.
There goes Eric Alexander. Good appearance. We appreciate him. Above all else, being patient with us.
As we work through some technical issues.
Yeah, there was a dose of that, wasn't there?
Well, I mean, we got it. I thought it was. Seemed like the quality was good. It was a good show. He's an interesting guy.
Easily the smartest person I think I've ever interviewed.
Probably one of mine as well.
Way up there.
Yeah.
Way up there.
Yeah, it's the type of thing I would. It's funny, you don't think about it when you think about speakers, right? You plug them in, they make sound, but there's a lot that goes into it to not only have the speaker make sound, but reproduce it accurately. And that's
no different than a top fuel car. It's not just as simple as hooking up a couple fuel lines and having it get loud.
Right. Yeah.
He made that comparison. I think it's pretty accurate.
But I mean, I will say, and I'm not trying to minimalize them, but it's really the same when you think about, we take all of these conveniences, modern conveniences that we have for granted. How a refrigerator works, or your dishwasher, or whatever else it is. When you really get down to it, some of these things have some pretty cool technology embedded in them, even though it's a daily device that we walk by all the time and just take for granted. But I will say that I'm looking forward to getting my set of Tekton speakers in my house. I can't wait.
Right on. Well, is there a time frame for that yet?
So I know that Eric had told me that he would be building them sometime in July. So
there you go.
I know he was busy. I had to place my order and kind of get on the waiting list. And he had mentioned about playing at 147 dB or whatever it was with that one set of speakers. I won't be able to do that. But I'm hoping that I can maybe up my game and have a nice concert in my living room at times, even though my wife and children won't enjoy it.
Well, sounds good. Keep us posted. We'll be on the air well before then, right? Because it's already July.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I certainly hope that we'll be on the air again somewhat regularly at this point in time.
It looks like things are going in the right direction for. It's not. We've got more cases in Seneca County, Wayne County, Monroe County, Ontario County today. So I really don't. We'll play it by ear. Nice little speaker pun. Well, if people don't get bored of listening to us, we could always go back to doing the remote podcast like we were. They're not quite as good, in my opinion, as when we're in studio. But But hey,
we'll figure something out. Hopefully we'll see you guys, everybody, in 2 weeks again. And I don't know who the guest is going to be, but we'll figure something out.
Sounds good. We'll see everybody then. It won't play. There it goes. See everybody later. This has been the Final Round Drag Racing Podcast, coming to you live from the FingerLakes1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. We'll see you right back here again in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching. Drag Racing Podcast, coming to you live from the FingerLakes1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. We'll see you right back here again in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching.